Alright, hello everyone. Nope, shouldn't do mouse. Okay, so I recently asked on my Twitter, you should go follow me on there if you want to participate in stuff like this, which weapon had the biggest fall from grace, i.e. the gap between the best it ever was and how it is now. Or I guess you could even say how bad it got at one point, and what weapon improved the most. And I also expanded this to include subs and special weapons and even abilities because I thought it would make it more interesting. So we're going to go through some of the responses and see if we can come up with any answers here. Let's get started. Yeah, I get my name as abbreviation for character, but I don't know why people actually call me that. It is super weird. Maybe it's a typo, but... Okay. I want to go over some ones that were, like, clearly picked one. Alright, so Astral SBL said 2 words. Ballpoint spotlight. I think a lot of people are going to bring up ballpoint purely because it had some of the highest highs out of any weapon in Splatoon history, which is true. Ballpoint with damage up and the Nuvo kit existing is really important. So I do get that. But at the same time, I don't think ball off. Okay. But at the same time, I don't think ballpoint fell off as hard as people think it did. Like, it's still a pretty solid high tier weapon at worst right now. So would that really be the biggest fall from grace? Probably not. Junior's probably not gonna be it. Emma says the crack-on roller went from being a roller with a rarer special to a roller with a commonly seen special. Wait, what? I'm actually a little confused what they're trying to say, so I'm gonna move on from it. Quiet, Quiet. I'm so sorry if I just butchered your name, but Burst Bomb in Splatoon 1. You could throw 4 of them on a full tank. It was glorious and broken. They're still good now, but it's something else in 2015. Yeah, I'm honestly gonna agree with it. Again, another weapon that didn't really fall from grace, but peak Burst Bomb is just a whole nother level compared to what it was today. Like, I cannot imagine 4 Burst Bomb nowadays, so yeah, I mean, hard to really argue with that. There are only 3 to 4 top high-level ballpoint players. I'm aware, but that doesn't really change how good I think the weapon is. So I get ballpoint, but then I remember Dynamo Roller got mega destroyed. Yeah, I think Dynamo is one of the top candidates for this list. Dynamo's kind of like a mid to low tier where all of its kits are pretty outclassed. I guess the Kensa technically isn't, but Dynamo doesn't really do anything super special anymore. In Splatoon 1 Dynamo, like, the thing people don't understand, Dynamo outpainted everything in Splatoon 1. Paint power was a lot weaker, and Dynamo painted more and more consistently than it did nowadays. Like, it was a massive threat. And then on top of that, at the peak of Splatoon 1, the entire thing was just a one-shot hitbox. It controlled so much space in paint. I don't know if I'd say it's the biggest fall from grace. That's hard to say because I think Dynamo, even nowadays, is somewhat decent. Maybe if you're going to say, like, the start of S2, before it got buffed back, like, a little bit, then maybe that could be argued, because at the start of S2, its kill range was super bad, and it had a lot weaker paint, etc. So, maybe, yeah, honestly, like, start of S2 from peak S1 Dynamo might actually be the hardest fall off for any main weapon. E-liter from S1 to S2 had a significant dip. Honestly, E-liter's dip was pretty much entirely just because of kits. I mean, it was a worse in 2, but it was still a very solid weapon. So, I mean, I don't really mega disagree with it. I mean, I don't really mega think it fell off. And I mean, it's more just, I don't know. I don't really put it there. So I think it's still fine. So is my chat not scrolling or am I dumb? No, my chat's just, there we go. RRDR says Kensa Pro. Everyone and their mother used it in 4.0. You're thinking 4.4 after the Booyah buff, but that's okay. And after that, everyone's totally abandoned it for K52. Yeah, it definitely fell off, but I don't think it's that bad. It more went from top tier because Booyah was so insane it could output enough of it that it made it one of the best main power-up options to, well, there's just other better MPU options in the game and better Booyah options. Pro has kind of always been an outclassed weapon. That's how it was throughout the entirety of S1 and most of S2. So, I mean, it's definitely a weapon that hasn't had a good enough time in the sun outside of brief MPU gimmick. But I wouldn't say it fell off super hard either. Maggie says, I feel like Kunder dropping was its improvement to support. Missiles might obviously be the most improved special weapon. Yeah, okay, missiles is the most improved special weapon between games. Like, there is no contest. Missiles used to be incredibly slow, incredibly weak, and now they're just fast, they do everything, on top of other specials being weaker. I definitely agree, there's no special that has been buffed as much as missiles. Like, that's definitely the biggest rise throughout the game. Though Kunder, I'm not sure. I think Kunder is still very solid. Mainly the nerfs that happened were to Torpedo. Torpedo used to do an insane amount of damage, but also Torpedo used to be really good in the meta because there was a lot more slower midline weapons, so Torp was a lot stronger, whereas right now everyone's kind of playing shooters that can just turn, shoot the Torpedo, and not really care as much. I definitely think it fell off more than people think, but I think it was more indirect changes that caused it, rather than direct nerfs to the weapon. Alright, Laura said range blaster. If we're going from when it released to right now, yeah, this is the hardest fall any weapon has had. I do think something like Dynamo could arguably be more, just because Dynamo at the start of S2 was in such a crazy bad spot, and Dynamo at S1 was stupid. But I think from, like, peak their launch to today, range is arguably the highest one. It has Grim, and Grim is still not horrible, like, it's playable, but Grim is playable because the kit carries the weapon so hard. So if we look at just the main weapon itself, like, especially if we're talking about custom range specifically, then yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, it used to just be so good at being able to slay everything. The way the meta was perfectly fit how that weapon wanted to play, and now it's the exact opposite, on top of being a way worse main weapon. Ballpoint already. Last ditch effort. Kind of saddened it was nerfed. Nerf? I'm guessing they meant it was buffed. I had to guess. I'm not too sure what they're saying. Maybe they confused an ability. Because LDE would be arguably the strongest rise out of any gear ability. Like, it got buffed and then got really good. So, yeah. I'd put range in the same tier as Inkbrush in your main weapon tier list. Because that list has no armor. And no missile. So no specials no specials to prevent the one-shot or punish slow weapons equals weapon better. Anyway. Yeah, I guess LDE is the highest rise out of any weapon. This is definitely not said correctly. Wait, someone later just put Leodos. What the hell? What the hell is Leodos? Someone just said Leodos is the hardest fall, bro. That's hilarious. What else? Blasters fell off hard was one some people said, and Squeezer and Tent being the opposite. Launch Tent was the worst, like, not the worst weapon in the game, but Launch Tent was horrible. That thing was ridiculously slow. There's so much about it. Like, dude did an entire video on how bad Tent was at launch. It's crazy. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out just to see, like, how crazy slow the weapon is. So I definitely agree that Tent's a pretty big arguer for highest rise, even with the nerfs it got afterward, but peak Tent was crazy strong, dude. And yeah, and the entirety of Blasters fell off pretty hard, of course. Kip. Kip says N parries had the biggest fall. I do not think they had the biggest fall. I do think they had a very big fall, though. So, I mean, it's definitely up there once MPU came out, the dually ink efficiency nerf, points for special. A lot of stuff hit it at once, so definitely one that fell out pretty hard. Haley said Kensa 52 for the rise. Yeah, I mean, K52 is the most buffed weapon in terms of just raw changes in Splatoon 2's history. Not a lot of them are drastic, but some of them were. And I think that mattered a ton in the end. So, yeah, I'd say Kgal as a rise was pretty damn insane at the end of it. So, yeah, there you go. Freebird says Splashdown for the specials. That's actually a fair point. Splashdown used to be like unreliable to cancel because it was based on like different netcode thing. Really weird to explain. So yeah, arguably Splashdown had a pretty large fall, but even then, I don't know if peak Splashdown was as good as people think it was. Like a lot of people are still new to reading it, and even then you could still kind of dodge it, and it didn't really shred specials the same way. So I don't know if I agree with it being as hard to fall, but it did fall, yeah. I think we've gone through all the common responses. Spore wants to bring up Luna Neo as well, in which, yeah, Luna's a pretty big one. Luna used to have Clash Blaster's Radius on top of a meta that fit it perfectly. I do think Luna's kit in 2 is actually better than what it had in 1. The vanilla Luna kit with Light Baller and Splat Bomb is amazing for it. But man, that main weapon used to be crazy in terms of its blast radius, and it just never really was the same after that was taken away from it. Barry said it was never nerfed super had. Sorry. Barry said it was never nerfed super hard, but V-Rapid never recovered from the 210 treatment. Yeah, that's kind of true. Rapid used to be one of the best weapons, mostly because there weren't a lot of options available. It got hit with the 210, and it just... Yeah, that really killed it a ton, so... Really crazy, honestly. It's hard to think about how that points for special nerf really hit it, and it's just been so uncommon. You see it a little bit, but the other kids just outclass it for the most part. It's kind of crazy. It's weird how it's never really been reverted. It's one of the oldest Splatoon 2 nerfs, and it was very clearly needed because of the meta at the time and not other options being available, so I'm kind of surprised that it never went back. Aerospray RG from pre-rank to rank. I wasn't around in pre-rank as much, I guess, but yeah, during Turf War meta, a lot of people sung Aerospray's praises. That being said, the main weapon has not changed that much from footage I've seen, so I don't think it really fell off. I think people just did not understand the game very well. Colo Flame is gonna say Baller. Yeah, Baller used to be insane after its 1.3 buffs. Like, that was ridiculously good, just in terms of its ability to tank everything. It would blow up fast. Like, it was just... It would eat everything. It would keep people alive and give them a second life. It did everything, dude. And now it just can't beat a singular suction bomb. So it's like, unless you're a light baller. Wow. If you're gonna include heavy baller too, like baller to heavy baller, that could be the hardest special fall, arguably. I think it honestly might have been. Astral said Splat 1, 96 deco easy. Not really, honestly. Splat 1 96 deco was still solid, even in the end game. Like, it had 62 damage and that hurt it, but damage up existed. And then there was Heavy Kraken, but honestly, it was still alright. It was more just outclassed by Cherry, but it was never really bad. Like, it was still a high tier weapon, so I don't know. And then in 2, it got a bit extra range. It's more just suffering because of kids. So, I don't know. I think that might be everything. Alright, we'll wrap this one up with these few. Okay, we have a few. Ninja says V-Jet, which, yeah, V-Jet, sort of. The weird thing is Jet Squelcher didn't get buffed that much. Like, it got the traditional shooter stuff, but it's more just that its special went from one of the worst in the game to the best in the game, and Jet outputted a ton of missiles. Like, Jet was always good at spamming missiles, but the active missile spamming wasn't always good, I guess. Yeah, Bamboo is a good point, too. Like, Bamboo was weird. Bamboo wasn't, like, ever bad, but Bamboo's also always had a dedicated player base. Like, Bamboo mains are kind of crazy. There's always been, like, a solid amount of Bamboo mains. There even is to this day. I don't think that weapon will ever not have a good bit of Bamboo mains, so that's kind of crazy to think about. So, cool weapon. We talked about Imperies. Jack says Machine from Splat 1 to 2. No one played in 1 and became a meta staple in 2. Yeah, Machine wasn't that bad in 1. It was more just unlucky with the kits, kind of the reverse of what I talked about with 96. But yeah, Machine definitely still kind of rose up a lot. So I'd definitely say it's a good rise. Is it the highest one? I don't know, but it's definitely up there. So I'll give it that. Alright, I think that's enough. Alright, so that was a fun little small discussion, but I hope you all have enjoyed this look back at other people's opinions.